Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive?
Always ready to dig in.
Well, today we're wading into some legal waters. Going to explore how a law meant to protect consumers has kind of turned into a bit of a headache for businesses.
Yeah, the one we're talking about is the TCPA, the Telephone Consumer Protection Act.
Right, from way back in 1991.
Yep, been around a while. The whole point was to stop those annoying robocalls and telemarketing spam.
Seems simple enough on the surface, right? Protect people from unwanted calls.
Exactly, but the way it's written, the language is so broad that it's become ripe for exploitation.
And when you add in the potential penalties, things get really interesting.
Oh yeah, the fines are nothing to sneeze at. We're talking $500 to $1,500 for each and every violation.
Per violation. Oof, that adds up fast.
It sure does, and that's where the serial litigators come in.
Now there's a term I've heard thrown around but never fully understood. Break that down for us.
Basically, you got individuals who make a career out of filing lawsuits, specifically targeting businesses they believe have violated the TCPA.
So they're like bounty hunters, but for legal loopholes.
In a sense, yeah, they're constantly looking for any tiny misstep, anything they can use to file suit.
And the goal isn't necessarily justice, but rather a settlement, right?
Bingo. They're banking on companies wanting to avoid a lengthy, expensive court battle, even if they're in the right.
So even if a company feels they haven't done anything wrong, the sheer cost of defending themselves can be crippling.
Exactly. It's like a no-win situation for many businesses, especially those who rely heavily on telemarketing.
Talk about a chilling effect on legitimate business practices.
It's a real problem, and unfortunately, this whole situation has created this cottage industry, you could call it, of lawyers and professional plaintiffs who are benefiting from the TCPA's current state.
Kind of sounds like the legal system itself is being gamed, in a way.
Yeah, it's definitely a point of contention, and to really illustrate this, there's a guy named George Moore.
Okay, George Moore, isn't he the guy who's filed over 400 TCPA lawsuits?
That's the one. And his case against a company called Callcentrix is a prime example of how this can all go sideways.
All right, what happened there? Give us the details.
So Callcentrix had a contract with another company, and that company allegedly made some calls without getting proper consent, violating the TCPA.
But Callcentrix itself wasn't directly making the calls, right?
Right, they were several steps removed from the actual calls.
And yet they were still hit with a massive lawsuit.
A nationwide class action, in fact, which could have been devastating.
Man, that's scary. Just goes to show how even a loose connection can land you in serious legal trouble.
Exactly. It highlights the need for businesses to be incredibly careful.
So if you're a company using telemarketing, what can you do to protect yourself in this kind of environment?
Well, first and foremost, strict compliance with the TCPA is non-negotiable. You have to dot your I's and cross your T's.
So making sure you get consent before every call.
Absolutely. And maintaining detailed records so you can prove you followed the rules.
What about those opt-out requests? When someone asks to be taken off your list.
Those have to be handled immediately and correctly, no exceptions.
Sounds like a logistical nightmare, honestly.
It can be, but thankfully there are services out there to help businesses navigate this stuff.
Oh, like what?
Well, there's one called TCPLitigatorList.com. They keep track of all the serial litigators and help companies stay informed about potential risks.
That sounds useful, and I heard they even have a free month offer for our listeners, right?
Yeah, just use the code TCPA free month when you sign up.
Handy. But prevention is only part of the story. Is anyone talking about changing the TCPA itself? Fixing the root of the problem?
Oh yeah, there are definitely some proposals floating around.
Like what? Fill us in.
Well, some folks are pushing to raise the bar for filing a lawsuit, make it harder to bring frivolous claims.
Makes sense. That could weed out some of the more opportunistic lawsuits.
Right, and another idea is to put a limit on how long someone has to file a TCPA claim.
So more accountability and less opportunity for these drawn-out legal battles.
Exactly. The goal is to find a better balance,
Yeah.
Protect consumers without unfairly burdening businesses.
Seems like a tough needle to thread for sure.
It is. There's no easy answer, but having these conversations is a good start.
Absolutely. And I think it underscores just how important it is for everyone to stay informed about this stuff.
Couldn't agree more. Businesses need to understand the risks and how to mitigate them, and consumers should know their rights.
Knowledge is power, as they say.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, folks, I think we've covered a lot of ground today. The TCPA, it's a fascinating example of how a well-intentioned law can have some unintended consequences.
It really shows how complex this whole world of regulations can be.
And it leaves us with a lot to ponder, especially as technology continues to advance at breakneck speed.
Exactly. How do we adapt these laws to keep pace with the changing ways we communicate?
It's a question that deserves some serious thought. So, listeners, I'll leave you with that one to chew on.
And as always, thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Until next time.